That's an amazing one. Yeah, from 50 cents to it went to $100 recently, right?
Yeah. Of course, I didn't hold it for the whole way,
For the whole.
but I still have Luna. I'm still very, very bullish on it and on the whole ecosystem, and on the players on it. There are some issues with it.
Hello and welcome to DeFi, the podcast where I have the privilege talking and asking some of the smartest brains in crypto all the questions that I have. Today on the show we will hear the story of Archon. You might know him from crypto Twitter, Discord, and from his work with venture DAOs, namely G Capital and 0x Ventures. Archon and his fellow DAO members are always looking to find and fund the next Rune, Luna or Olympus DAO, but they also do not shy back from getting their hands dirty and help the projects with their services. They give advice on tokenomics, they can do marketing, they can do all kinds of stuff, as you will hear in this episode. I'm super grateful that Archon is also a podcast host, as you can hear from the superb audio quality on his part. My audio was a bit poorer because I could only bring my smallest wireless microphone to Rio de Janeiro, where I was recording this episode. But before we start, a quick word from our sponsor. Let's quickly address our sponsor today. CryptoValley.jobs is a job board where engineers, designers, analysts, traders, and community builders can find cool crypto jobs. Full disclosure, I run this job board as a side project of this podcast. So if you are looking for a job or you want to advertise an open position, please go and visit CryptoValley.jobs. And while you're there, make sure to sign up on the email list so you're always informed when new jobs are posted on the platform. That's CryptoValley.jobs, and now let's start the show. Archon, do I pronounce this right? Archon.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's from StarCraft, right? You see it on my avatar. I played a lot of StarCraft 1. I'm so old. In the early days, and
I played Age of Empires 2. Is that more or less the same time?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Could be.
Okay. But I think StarCraft is really a great game. I've never played it, but it's supposed to be one of those kind of like evergreen games that
it's
people
awesome.
Play
you can still
today.
Like play StarCraft 2 and it looks awesome. And it's interesting because I've witnessed many StarCraft players becoming more or less professional poker players, and I also played a lot of poker a few years back. And then from them, many progressed towards crypto. It's really interesting.
Yeah, the strategic minds and maybe a little bit the gambling touch in them as well.
Yeah, also a kind of a feeling for numbers and many of
probabilities.
Those attributes are also helpful in crypto, definitely.
Mm-hmm. One question I usually ask before the interview is what makes this episode a success for you? What do you want out of this?
Yeah, I think perhaps several things, but I think the most valuable one would be if people decide to spend more time in crypto or even change their working day radically. There's a high demand for every skill set right now. If you're a writer, if you're an illustrator, if you're a front-end designer, back-end developer in general, analytics guy, there are projects out there looking for you.
Okay, so you really want to bring people actively into the crypto space. Is that one of your goals?
I've heard so many life-changing stories. They are not regretting it. They're much more happier afterwards, after they did this step. But it took them, also myself, a lot of time to think about it. And if you have somebody you can talk to about it, who has done it already, I think this helps a lot.
Yeah.
And many people are still alone, researching on their own, investing on their own. They're often just afraid, scared, and sometimes it's easier than you think. And I had a discussion once with a developer, and he hit me up on Twitter, and we discussed things. And a few weeks later, he was working for one of the biggest US funds, and quit his old job. Things happen differently in this space.
Yeah. That's also a little bit the reason why I do this podcast. I'm trying to reach out to other people because it can be quite a lonely thing. I mean, you are kind of a renegade in your laptop, and your other friends are probably not interested in crypto, which is my case. And now, as I'm doing this full time, it can be lonely, and the podcast gives me this perfect excuse to reach out to everybody that I want and learn from them, and hopefully I also add value because I spread this out to the world. But
Yeah,
I
that's
think
that's a
you.
great theme. It's not only about working, as you said. It's also about like exploring this space, not alone, but doing it together. And this is also what G is about, right? It's just a bunch of people doing things together, and by this being much more successful and having much more fun and all of this. And everybody should have a group of like-minded people to interact with and go for this journey together.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, how many times a day do you check your portfolio?
I think this changed drastically in beginning of my crypto journey in 2018, after everything like went to shit, and I saw an opportunity there. Unfortunately, it took quite a long time for this opportunity to materialize. But yeah, then I checked very often. Also in 2020, I checked often. But the higher the portfolio goes, and the more you are focusing on building yourself and doing more than just like the trading, the less you care. And I'm not checking daily
No.
right now.
Okay. Wow.
Doesn't mean I'm rich, right? It just means like I'm focusing on different stuff. And
Yeah.
just by waking up and checking prices and checking, I don't know, Reddit or Twitter, nothing positive comes out of this, right? Positive things only happen if you create something, if you interact with people, if you do stuff, then a lot of things start happening. But just passively consuming, in the beginning, it's helpful, of course, because you learn a lot. But at some point in this journey, you need to start creating stuff on your own. If it's just spreading the knowledge you have experienced.
Yeah. I think from this introduction, we can already hear that you are a guy who had a job, and now you don't have a regular job anymore, a corporate job, and you are dedicating your time full-time crypto. How would you introduce yourself and what you're doing?
I was a guy with a job. Yeah, that's correct. No, I mean, I'm self-employed right now, and originally my plan was to do more of consultancy work in areas where I've been working in before. It's like mostly product management. And then it turned out there are so many opportunities already in the crypto and DeFi space where I can help different projects, where I can do my own stuff, where I can create content. This already takes so much of my time, and I can at least partly live from this. So I don't have to do the other stuff. I can always work in the traditional space, but as long as it works, I focus on crypto stuff and work with projects and help wherever I can. And I think the most important thing is I can work on stuff I love, where I learn something, where I have fun, where I work with great people, and I can work where and when I want to do it.
And what I know is that you work with G Capital and Zero X Ventures. You also have a podcast. But it sounded to me right now that you are making your money with other projects. Are you kind of like getting hired by crypto projects and they pay you for your work, or did I misunderstand?
Yeah. There are different things like Zero X Ventures and G Capital. These are decentralized venture funds, you could say, or venture DAOs. This takes some of my time, and there's a lot of discussion in these groups. We'll probably talk later about it, what those groups do. And it's just like a bunch of very smart people, much smarter than I am, interacting with each other and exchanging ideas and projects and all of this. This certainly takes a lot of time, but then I also work alone with projects and trying to support them in different roles. This could be like writing, like what I do for XDeFi Wallet, for example, writing articles. For other projects, I help with in a kind of an advisory role when it comes to certain strategic topics like product management or tokenomics or NFTs. So and I try to contribute from what I've learned, both from a theoretical perspective, but also by just being a degen and and trying out a lot of projects to help with. And sometimes this gets into a kind of a paid relationship, but it's not the overarching goal, right? And it's perhaps
And
also important for other people. Like if you seek out the opportunity to help projects and support them, and then sometimes more happens.
And what would you say? And I would like to dive into this because I think it might be a sneak peek of the future of work. You mentioned before that you work for a DAO, you work for a decentralized venture fund, and I really want to dive into this. But before that, I would like to figure out a little bit, what did you do before?
Yeah, I worked for some SMEs, like 100 to 200 employees, mostly software companies, software as a service companies, and then doing consultancy, account management. I had my own teams also in different countries. And then I switched to product management, which I found much more fascinating because you could actually create and build products. And
Like Scrum Master and stuff, is that part of it?
I started as a product owner first, really working hands-on with the development teams, and then transcended more into a strategic position, like where you had to manage a portfolio of products, thinking about marketing strategies and pricing strategies. And I kind of got into bigger and bigger companies, and then efficiency just went down. Right? It's all about politics. It's so very much different than how crypto projects operate. It's hard for me to imagine going back into a corporate position where you have like 5 bosses above you and a lot of reporting and then PowerPoints, and every year you have a big restructure. I mean, it's not fun, right? At least for me. There are some people that like it, but I think most people in our generation, I would say, they're not longer motivated by becoming department head in such a corporate, and where you work 16 hours a day for a few $100 more, and it's very stressful, and in the end you don't see tangible results, right? And after a few years I really got tired, and the motivation went down. And on the same side, I got more and more engaged into the crypto ecosystem, and how people work together in crypto is fascinating, I think. Yeah. I work now with so many smart people across the globe. Nobody cares who you are, where you're from, what is your education, what you have done before, like all these bullshit questions you have in. And I recruited a lot of people in my traditional lifetime, and also did the same mistakes. All of this doesn't count. It only counts like if you can provide added value, if you have created something, if you have smart ideas, if you're engaging with people. And I think this is kind of an ideal thing. Right. I mean, there is also a lot of downsides. Don't get me wrong. Right. Just for example, you have very few women in the whole space, and probably there's a reason to it. But still, I think it's so much more towards an ideal compared to the corporate world.
Okay, so you got frustrated. You were not motivated. But how? I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, you already started to build your portfolio in crypto while you had a job. And then when was the moment when you said, now is a good time to switch over from my traditional job to a full-time crypto job? And what would you say, because you're living in Switzerland, I also live in Switzerland, we have like one of the highest living costs, right? It's not like we are in Bali and we can get through with a couple of $100 per month. To do this, it needs some balls, and more than balls, it needs some capital as well. Can you shine a little bit of light, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, when you said, hey, that's now a moment where I can jump over?
Yeah, let's say, I mean, it's really so much dependent on your personal situation. Like, how old are you? Are you like 22 and you can live in the basement just eating ramen all day? Then it's a very different situation than if you have to sustain a family and have a house, apartment, or whatsoever. So it's really hard to say. But I think you need to have enough capital that you can sustain the way of living without getting worried and without any income. Because like if things don't get traction immediately, and then you start getting worried and stressed and burnout, doesn't help anybody. So I suggest you have to have some capital to hold out for a few months, and then you can also try out things, right? And if it doesn't work, then you do the next, and then you do the next, and sometimes at some point it will make a click. But also have a strategy. What's the worst case, right? You're doing stuff, you're creating stuff, you're interacting with projects, you're kind of trying to sell your time or sell your service. Even better if you can sell a service, it scales much better. But if for some reason it doesn't work out, so what's your fallback? Yeah, can you still find a job? Can you do something else? But always try to be able to maintain your good sleep about it, and not make some like ad hoc decision and say fuck you to your boss, and then you don't have a plan what you want to do, right?
That's
But
never
on
a
the
good
other
idea
side,
to say fuck
that's
you
not
to
a
your
good
boss.
idea. But on the other side, I mean, you also don't have to wait to sustain 20 years of no income. If you have enough, then it's good. But yeah, I think.
Have you heard about the FIRE movement? Do you know what it is?
No.
The FIRE movement is like a personal finance movement. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early, and they have like this rule with the stock market that you can.
Okay, like 20, I don't know, 20 years, and then you calculate like 6-7% of yearly interest that you can get by investing in an index fund.
Yeah, exactly. You take out 4%, between 3 and 4% of your income. Everything is in stocks, and then you can basically live off that.
Yeah, sure. I read the Money Mustache blog. Perhaps this is
he's the most famous guy. I think he made this lean fire because he lives very frugally, right?
Yeah.
But makes all the money with his blog. I think he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Many years ago, I read it. Quite interesting, but yeah, things have changed.
Okay. I guess what I tried to figure out a little bit is Archon, and I know we Swiss people, we don't like to talk so much about money, right? But I mean, since you work with G Capital and OX Ventures VC, we need to unravel that a little bit. You know, like what would you say is good enough to quit your job? Do you need like 6 figures? Do you need 7 figures? What is something that you say for yourself is like, hey, that's how I feel comfortable?
I think in Switzerland you need at least high 2 figures or low 6 figures in order to sustain a good living.
Yeah.
On a yearly basis. And then you have to find a way, like this is your goal, and then you have to find a way how can you create different income streams in order to achieve that. In a bull market, it can just be like crypto investing, it can be farming yields, but how convinced are you that you will be able to get 20% APY also in 5 years? I mean, I hope we do, but can you be sure? Yeah, if you take Anchor as a kind of a baseline interest rate of 20%, I mean, if you talk to normal people that don't know about DeFi, don't know about crypto, they ask if you're crazy or what scam you ran into. And there are many different sources for the DeFi yield, like it's about lending, it's about block rewards and many other sources. And some of them just go down in a bear market. If there's no interest for leverage, then the lending rates go down. And we haven't really seen this yet.
Yeah. Definitely. And I wanted to ask you this. Do you think we're still in a bull market, or are we in a bear market, or what is... Off the cuff, what did you say? Like, what is your feeling? Obviously, I know that nobody really knows properly.
Yeah, nobody really knows. I mean, I'm not a finance guy, right? We are now in a bear market because the asset prices went down 20%. This rule doesn't really apply to crypto. But what we now see, I think for the first time since many years, more or less since the beginning, is that the market doesn't really move in unison based on what Bitcoin and Ethereum does. Like we have seen now a Cosmos one, we see NFTs getting more traction again. It's a sign of a maturing market. We again can rely a bit more on fundamentals and network effects and see where really promising projects or networks taking off, and then they can rise also despite Bitcoin or ETH going down or going sideways over a long time frame. And there have not been many examples of this. I mean, I remember Link, the Chainlink in 2019 going like crazy. Everything was going down and Link was just going up for a year, but this was a kind of unique. And now you see more of these developments. So I think this is a good sign. I now don't think we are in a final bear market right now. We are very much dependent now on the whole macro situation, interest rates, and what the Fed does. And it's a very unfortunate thing that crypto is dependent on what the Federal Reserve decides, and that now people are kind of hyped if they're printing more money because the whole crypto narrative pays off. But if you're then happy about people getting their funds diluted, that's a bad thing, right? So it's a bit of a paradox that we see right now.
Yeah, especially Bitcoin, where they said, hey, we are inflation proof. And hey, inflation is super high, but Bitcoin doesn't go up that much. It seems to be more like related to stocks. And so the narrative are always shifting, which obviously makes sense because you have to somehow explain what is happening, reality. But I think it is kind of devaluing or like some narratives that have been told are probably not true. Or I don't know how you feel specifically about Bitcoin
Yeah,
now.
and you cannot just trust like a certain asset to rise in price because like all the ducks are lined up in a row, because it's still dependent on what happens on a macro level. Right, so you always
Yeah.
have to take this into account, despite being more than bullish on a certain project. It can it all has effects, and it's still a risk asset, as so many like equities are too, and so there's some correlation. But yeah, I'm not a financial investor and
And
not a
none of
trader.
this is
So
financial advice,
of course
right?
not. Of course not. There are much smarter people that you should follow on on this stuff. Mm.
Yeah, but I feel also like a lot of smart people can be also they're just wrong with more conviction. Uh, Speaking of smarter people or other people, you already mentioned that G Capital is one of the organizations you work with. Can you explain exactly what G Capital is and what it does and what it really looks like? And also OX Ventures, if it's different or if it's the same? Because I think a lot of people have troubles, even me, to understand what is really a DAO. You know, it's such a buzzy word, like a decentralized autonomous organization.
Yeah,
But
sure.
how is it? Is it
I'm not
just
sure if I can or want to explain like the DAO in essence, because there are so many DAOs and forming around so many topics right now, and I think you will see many more in this year forming around very different themes or topics, or gaming, for example. But G Capital, it has just started as a group of people like chatting up in Discord, exchanging ideas, exchanging trading strategies and thoughts. And then this group just grew, and I just joined it at the beginning of last year. And yeah, then the magic happened. Like more and more people were able to spend also more time in the crypto space, were able to create content, were able to approach projects, especially early on, and help them. And yeah, this just started a very nice dynamic where people with quite a similar mindset came together and formed around like some common goals that, like, well, for example, number one is we want to have fun, and number two is we want to grow as a group but also as individuals. But if you find people with the very same values than you have, and where you can get really honest feedback, I think this is incredibly valuable. um, because you can honestly discuss ideas and topics and projects that you like, and you can also get the negative sides, because someone will also find the leaks or the disadvantages of some things. And this is kind of the core around it. And when we started as a really decentralized group of, let's say, angel investors to invest in some projects in 2021, and also help them with like their marketing strategy, with tokenomics, with the whole DeFi strategy. Then we started a podcast, we started a blog, and we are certainly trying to grow the whole thing, and also being an alternative to more traditional VCs. And we see also more and more groups that do similar things. Like CRX Ventures is even bigger in terms of the number of members, and also in terms of investments. And there's GT Capital in the Terra ecosystem. There's eGirl Capital, very famous with very well-known individuals. So I think the decentralized funds or groups, or however you call them, yeah, it's definitely an interesting force, and they can be very helpful also for early projects, yeah, because they can be very hands-on in supporting it. Because many projects start very in a small setup. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and they have nobody for marketing. They have nobody to research certain stuff, and very busy. And if they're able to outsource this to a group, this can help them a lot early on. And if you have people that have already interacted with dozens or hundreds of protocols, and they've seen a lot of stuff, and what is successful, what is not so successful, what is best practice, tapping this knowledge, this can be very valuable for people. Yeah.
Do you have like a shared fund or something, or is it more like each member kind of individually invests, and you probably have like one understanding of what the terms are going to be with the investment. Everybody gets probably the same deal. The G Capital guys get so much and so much if they invest this and this, or is it more, hey, we are G Capital, we work as a venture fund, we have this fund that we are able to deploy together?
Yeah, I cannot really discuss this in detail, but in the end, it's everybody making his or her own decisions. Yeah, and it's just a loose construct at the moment. It might change in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Because one of the problems why ICOs are kind of a little bit on the backtrack now is because it's really a pain to communicate with so many different individual investors, right? And everybody has some high expectations, and you need immediately community managers to kind of handle all these people who have now invested in you and have now demands from your protocol and are looking on your fingers and get emotional online, etc. And with VCs, you don't have that so much. You obviously also have to, keep a good relation with them. But I guess they also have a more professional understanding, etc.
You can get other problems with VCs. You just ask Jack Dorsey how much he likes VCs. But let's frame it a bit differently. I think there's generally not really a best practice solution right now for early raises for new projects, because as you mentioned, if you do a public sale and sell tokens to a lot of individuals, of retail investors, have you been in one of those telegrams after the public sale? I mean, it's a shit show, right? You have thousands of people complaining, wanting the price to pump, some who spread FUD. And it's not fun as a project managing those. On the other side, you want to distribute the token and you want to offer everybody investing at a fair price. Because, I mean, we have also to think about the original motivation behind. Right now, only accredited investors can get the sweetest opportunities in the traditional market, right? And now crypto enables kind of everybody to invest. But then, I mean, the investment strategy of many people is just questionable. So what's a good way to do a raise? And I think the better examples we have seen in recent times, and this is mainly on the Terra ecosystem, are these lock drops. Astroport, for example, the soon, I guess, biggest DEX on Terra has done, and this has been incubated by Delphi Digital. And this is a quite good way where you can raise initial funds, and many are doing this right now. And I'm eager to see if this also happens on other blockchains. We have seen liquidity bootstrapping pools that also allow everybody to go in at a certain price, or Dutch auctions like SushiSwap Miso is doing, for example. And generally, I like those more than these hyped up public sales. And
Okay, but everybody is on the same level playing field with these ones you just mentioned, right? But I wonder, the ones where you as G Capital or OX Venture go in, how are these working?
Yeah, these are definitely at a different stage in development, right? Because projects also early on, they need some funds, right? They need to pay a team. Not everybody wants to eat ramen in the basement, and you need to do investment. You need to hire people. You need to have liquidity ready early, and you have costs. But you have perhaps just an idea of a project, or you have like a light paper, or you have MVP, or you have a proof of concept or whatever, but you already need funds. And what has happened in 2017, then you write a short white paper and you raise money, and then you develop for 3 years, and then you launch perhaps something, or you go yachting. The alternative is to go to a VC to present or a decentralized group or whatever to people you trust, and where you know they have a certain amount of knowledge and expertise, and you pitch the idea, you get feedback, and you ask for help, and then you do an initial seed investment, for example. And only a few months later, the first product will go live, and you will be in a stage where you can actually approach the public. Because if you don't have a website, a working product, advanced concept, how can a retail investor decide if he or she wants to invest? I mean, it's possible, of course, and this happened in 2017. But a VC can also really help you as a project. because they have done it X times and they have the contacts. They also can connect you with other projects. And sometimes I'm missing a bit from we all retail, right? But from people complaining in Telegram groups and so on, how they support the project or how they can support the project. Because only shilling on Twitter, that's not helpful, right?
Yeah. So, what is an example that you say, hey, we did a great job with a project that you raised money as a VC that you're willing to share, that you say, hey, that was ideal. That's what we would put on the website if we would be a traditional VC. We're proud on this one. We put it on the website. This is the logo. We have invested in Uber, earliest round or whatever. Do you have one of those?
I think there are a few of them. I just mentioned Torstarter because it was our first one where we did a strategic investment, because many of our group, of the G Capital group, very close with Torchain, and they've been early adopters and early users of Torchain. And Torstarter has been one of the first projects that kind of were incubated out of this ecosystem. They went through really tough times. Although being unlucky in some areas, they're always trying to change to the better, pivoting strategies and also expanding now to different blockchains. This is obviously something you want to see, a project that's constantly analyzing the market, constantly adapting and changing strategies, trying out stuff, and even if there are complaints around it. And because in the traditional world, it's hard to see those things because companies get big and it's a slow-moving ship. Yeah, and in crypto you have like speedboats. And another project perhaps I want to mention on the Terra side is Kujira, the liquidation engine for Anchor. I myself didn't see the full potential in the very beginning because it's just doing liquidations on Anchor. But it has proven so valuable for Anchor itself and for the whole Terra ecosystem, also for users to be able to kind of get ETH and Luna at a discount. And the vision and the team is really delivering top work and constantly thinking about expansion. And they can be kind of the liquidator of sorts, not only on Anchor, but across a lot of protocols on Terra and even across Terra. And this is a strong value proposition.
And usually in those deals, I assume you don't get shares in the company, you get the tokens, right?
Yeah, it's not equity, it's utility tokens. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have usually some vesting schedule, how long you have to hold the tokens before you're able to sell. What are some, like typical terms, what do you say that makes sense for people maybe listening and saying, hey, I am looking to raise money and...
Yeah, there are good and bad examples, but I would say like for strategic and private investors, you want them as a project to commit to you over a long time frame. So not let them out after a few weeks or months. The longer they are vested, the longer they will be engaged with you and also trying to contribute to the project and have a shared interest in the success of the project. So I think having a 6 to 12 months cliff is something reasonable. So a cliff means you don't get any tokens. You might get some tokens at the token launch event, getting enough initial float of the token, because like you probably know, infamous Solana projects with a very low circulating supply in the beginning, token price shoots up and then bleeds over the coming months or even years. So you want to see that there's enough circulating supply in the beginning. And then the total vesting about 2 or 3 years or even 4 years, it's reasonable. Yeah? And it's really also, again, depending on the overall market sentiment. Right now we are in a project market because there's lots of capital out there. And most projects seem to be oversubscribed, so they can be more strict with the deals. And if the market changes at some point in time, then perhaps it's again an investor market, and they are more able to dictate the rules and say like, yeah. But in the end, you see also many investors that are very happy to increase or even propose to the project to increase the vesting timeline or have a longer cliff, because really being committed to the project and believing in the long-term success, that's something very important. And especially the top VCs like Delphi, Paradigm, and so on, they're typically really, really committed to those projects. Yeah.
And maybe now the other side of the coin, where other people are listening and thinking, hey, It's again the same thing as before. I thought crypto is open for everybody, and now there's like these groups behind the scene that are getting sweetheart deals. They get like tokens for pennies on the dollar and drop it. The famous shitcoin waterfall, where basically the VCs get the coins early for such a good price that whatever happens with the project later, they for 100% get good returns. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's really happening? Do you think it's more like some bad actors and some good actors? What is your thinking?
Yeah, of
to
course.
this
I mean,
lyricism?
of course, bad things happen. But we're again a bit in the question at the beginning. I mean, there have been good examples for really fair launches. Perhaps people just commit liquidity and then they get tokens. And that's good if the project is able to do such a fair launch without any VC involvement. And there are many platforms and protocols that did it. That's beautiful. Sometimes projects seek out VCs because they want help with certain aspects. And then it's also good. Typically, you want to combine it then with an alternative where everybody can get in at a fair price. We've talked about mechanics where you can do this. You can have like liquidity bootstrapping pool. You can have lock swaps. So I think the one is not ruling out the other. You can do a seed round and have some private investors with a small percentage of the overall token supply, and also have enough supply for everybody who believes in the project to get a token at a fair price. But if you're set up in a way where you can do a fair launch for everybody, then that's good.
I think it's interesting that Terra seems to be. It seems that they are doing quite a good job with growing bottom up in this kind of more organic way. While you mentioned before, for instance, Solana, it's one of my bigger positions as well, has performed very good, but the DeFi stuff and even the Solana token, like how it's distributed, is very VC heavy, and it's kind of hindering the ecosystem to grow because too many people are dropping their coins, don't have conviction, and the community is kind of missing with those coins, with those DeFi coins on Solana. And
yeah, I mean, also, many DeFi tokens got hammered anyway, especially now again in the last drop. I mean, if the DeFi Pulse Index, for example, compared to Ethereum, it went down, I don't know, 90% or so over the last month. This contains mainly like the original blue chips on Ethereum, like SNX and Wi-Fi and others. So they also lost a lot of traction. What we see now is also like protocol tokens or government tokens on Terra, for example, or Solana having a really, really hard time. People are kind of fleeing to the layer one asset, being it Sol or Luna, because it's also it's less risky. Like it's a less risky asset than having like a DEX governance token. And for some also the network effect and value accrual is easier to measure. And honestly, also many projects have also shit tokenomics. And this pays off now in a bad sense. We already see again countermeasures like the V curve token model is really appreciated now. Many new projects have been implementing it from the very beginning. Many existing projects are trying to implement it now, changing it. So you have to lock your tokens for a long amount of time. So that's the beauty of things. When we see things don't work as they should, things are changing to a positive way. Also, like the whole in 2017, like how tokens were distributed, it's completely different to how tokens are distributed today. Or last year. And last year we had all this liquidity mining and high emissions, high inflation, and now thanks to Olympus DAO, we see a trend to protocol-owned liquidity. Also here we can see the first downsides of it because it's again like emissions and people are selling it. But we are in a very, very early stage, and we need to experiment with things, see what really works out, and then adopt the best practices. And luckily, these are all relatively small teams, and they can implement those best practices or the meta games relatively quickly, and things get better every time.
And I just want to dive one more time before I have some other questions into this DAO, and specifically now 0x Ventures. And since it's a DAO, on the website you can basically apply to become a member. And I've seen you have to fill in a form and provide a lot of information. And I wanted to ask some of those questions that you have to answer for the 0x Ventures to become a member to you.
It's interesting. Not sure if I know the question. I'm also just one of the plain members of CX Ventures, but let's try it.
One of the first things you have to do, no, it's actually one in the middle. It's like, please enter your Defi score. I never heard of that. What is the Defi score, and how high would you rank on the Defi score?
Defi Score, yeah, that's interesting. That's like a score, definscore.com, and it kind of scans your wallet and scans what you have done with your wallet over the last months and years, and what you have interacted with, which protocols, so how many transactions you have with MetaMask or your Ethereum wallet in general. It gives you a score and tells you how degen you are. So
is it from 1 to 100, or how does it?
It gives you a leaderboard of like 56,000 people have done it already, and I, with the wallet I'm connected now, about 350. So it's between chat and degen.
Okay, congrats. The next question. Tell us about 2 projects where you have been really early. How did you discover them?
Really early and successful, or really early and got rug pulled? I mean, that's I take the successful ones first.
Yeah, if you apply to become a member, I guess it's better to have a successful one.
I guess so. So really early and interesting. I think, yeah, Torchain Woon is definitely for me still one of the most interesting projects, and undervalued for many people, because it's still the only protocol where you can natively swap Bitcoin to Ethereum, to Litecoin, to Bitcoin Cash, and soon also to Terra-based assets without a custodian and without wrapping your tokens. And I think it's still revolutionary, and it's not enough talked about. And the very strong tokenomics, because it's a deterministic price and it's based on the capital locked in the protocol. So the more capital is provided as liquidity to Torchain, the higher the room price is. It's 3 times actually. And there's a good analysis I can share with you afterwards if somebody wants to read up about
I can link it up also.
That's great. And yeah, I discovered it at 30 cents, I think. I don't even know when, but it's quite a long time ago. And it has been about $20. I think now it's about $6, but I'm still very optimistic that we see all-time highs, perhaps even 2022. No investment advice. And the second project is definitely a Luna at 50 cents, also really long time ago.
Wow.
And back then, nobody was talking about it. And what I saw was it was already one of the blockchains with the highest overall fees, just based on their Chai implementation. So Chai is a payment app in South Korea where you can pay in retail shops, but also online. And the whole transaction is routed through Terra blockchain using the Korean Won stablecoin. And they were already clear that there are plans coming up now with DeFi and with a native stablecoin on the blockchain, which is unique, right? I mean, no other blockchain has a fully integrated native stablecoin, especially not a decentralized one. Yeah, obviously I invested not enough, but it was a good.
That's an amazing one. Yeah, from 50 cents to it went to $100 recently, right?
Yeah, of course. I didn't hold it for the whole way,
but
I still have Luna. I'm still very, very bullish on it and on the whole ecosystem and on the players on it. There are some issues with it. There's no question. There are sacrifices being made for this huge growth, but it's now the blockchain with the second highest total value locked after Ethereum, and yeah, there's a good reason for it.
Great, that was very good. Let's go to the next question. It's kind of in the same vein. What investments have you made the most in the recent months? Why did you pick them? I guess what you made the most money in, I guess, in recent months.
Actually, in recent months, I've mostly been farming and not so much investing. But what I tweeted about recently was what I missed, which was for Olympus, for example. Because back in the time, and I think Ryan Watkins from Messari, he did a Twitter thread about like alternative stablecoins at this time. And it mentioned Olympus, Ohm, and it also mentioned Float and Phi and others. And I was always thinking we need a decentralized stablecoin that is not pegged to fiat money. And I found the concept of Float, so it's Float protocol with a floating price, algorithmic backed by the bank token. I found this concept very interesting, and I participated very early on. And others at G, they went with Olympus, which is a very different story. They invented protocol-owned liquidity. And people made really a good amount of money by believing in it and by staking their own early. And now it's one of the most famous protocols in DeFi, and gave birth to many mutations or babies or forks or spoons, however you want to call it. So, and I missed it kind of completely.
Yeah, totally. Me too. Hey, we've already hit an hour mark. Did I miss something that we should talk about?
Perhaps we do a second episode at some point. But I think the most important thing to take away is right now, I know so many projects, they're really looking for resources. I think it's a great opportunity right now. If you're not happy in your professional life right now, to take this step. If you have been thinking about it, like approach people, talk with people who have recently done this step and moved from a, let's say, traditional career to crypto, and not wait in 5 or 10 years when it's, I don't know, perhaps it's never too late, but I mean, things will also change there. And it's always better if you are in the early cohort.
Should people reach out to you on Twitter at Archon_0x?
Sure. Mention me on Twitter and we can have a discussion. My DMs are not open because I get so many shit messages, but you will find me.
Great.
Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.